today with two new motorcycles that challenge what it means to be a cruiser. We have the 2019 Ducati Diavel 1260S, which blends cruiser ergonomics and aesthetics with the sport bike-like performance that we're used to from Ducati. And then we have the 2019 Harley-Davidson FXDR 114, which takes that softail platform, uses the biggest engine available on the platform, a cast aluminum swing arm, inverted front end, raked out, but the trail's adjusted in the triple trees, so it actually handles surprisingly well. And then last year's winner of Cycle World's 10 Best, we have the Fat Bob 114. Not a lot's changed on this bike, but we wanted to bring it out and see how it stacks up against these two new high-performance cruisers. So we're gonna get out on the road, rip these things around, and see which one we like most. All right, we just had a great day out riding these three bikes around Southern California. Now we're back in the garage. I got Justin Dawes here with me. We're gonna talk about the bikes, the ups and downs, and what we liked about them.
Yeah, it was a good day. It was hot.
It was very hot, but the bikes did well. My butt didn't get sore.
No butt soreness in all three of the bikes, which is pretty good considering the seating position, especially on the two Harleys with the forward controls, you know.
Yeah, let's get into ergonomics on the bikes. The Harleys I thought they were pretty similar performance-wise. The rake and the rear tire are a little bit limiting on the FXDR, but the worst thing for me on that bike was the ergonomics. You're just so folded over with those clip-ons and forwards.
It's like you're in this kind of folded over flying V, backwards flying V position on the FXDR, which feels a little awkward going around the corners. And then it's kind of annoying when you're just cruising too, like when you're going in a straight line. You're so canted forward. I mean, I wish the bars were just maybe a tad bit pulled back more.
Yeah.
And maybe I wouldn't have that complaint, but as is, it's kind of funky.
Yeah, if the bars had a little bit more rise, if the foot controls were a little bit further back, you'd be in a position to better use the power that you have there.
Yeah, and the foot peg position is actually really kind of good and bad. There's a lot of peg clearance, but when your foot finally, or the peg finally gets near the ground, you're dragging your heel in the ground before the foot peg hits.
They're very narrow foot pegs,
and they're
which
very
I think
narrow.
is a lot of how they get that lean angle. So when you get down there, you're touching your boot.
Yeah, you're touching your boot. So I completely chamfered a set of boots in one day. Like, they're smoked.
Yeah.
You know, and if I owned a bike like that, what would I do? Like, I'd have to buy a set of boots every time I went riding in the mountains?
I do like how it fills the old V-Rod silhouette. You know,
for sure.
Of the power cruiser, it sort of fills that void for Harley.
Yeah, it's long and low.
It does have a place, but as far as aggressive riding and hitting twisties and spending a full day on the bike, I don't think that's going to.
Yeah, the Fat Bob for me was better
in
that regard.
Right.
You're more upright. You know, the controls are actually feel a little bit closer than the controls on the FXDR. And it's just kind of a more neutral seating position where you're not completely canted over. I could sit there all day on that bike and not get sore and not be bummed out about it. I mean, I wish the controls were mids, but then you would lose the cornering clearance completely. So
yeah, I agree. I also wish that it had mids, but can't really do it with the 2-to-1-to-2 pipe on that bike. And but yeah, I mean, between those two, the Fat Bob took it. I felt like the FXDR was geared a little bit lower. You get a little bit more torque, a little bit more off the line.
Yeah.
So that was fun. I enjoyed that aspect of the bike more.
But then seating position on this, if we're still talking about ergonomics,
wildly different.
Wildly different.
Very standard.
It's almost naked bike, a little bit. It's like a mixture between naked bike and cruiser, for me. So it's still kind of laid back a little bit. Your feet aren't completely underneath you, but they're not kicked out in front of you like the X Diavel would be. So it gives you a lot more control, you know, in the corners and stuff too, and it feels more realistic for
with your feet not being stretched out in front of you like that, you can actually put your weight on the pegs and move your body when you want to.
And it takes the weight off your tailbone and puts it like on your sits bone, right? So you're sitting on your butt instead of on your tailbone.
Right.
So if you're going for a long straight ride, it's going to be more comfortable, I think, too.
Yeah, and the seats really wide. You've got nice pullback on the bars.
Yeah.
Sitting on the bike, there's so much bike in front of you.
There
That's
is.
one thing that
It
you
feels
realize.
really long.
It feels really long when you're on it, but when you actually lean forward and start getting into it, it's
That
surprisingly
kind of goes away.
agile.
Yeah. You would think that this bike feels long, but it doesn't
It really doesn't compared
to
to the
that
Diavel,
in terms of like just looking at the real estate in front of you.
So we touched on engine character, on how the FXDR is geared a little bit lower than the Fat Bob. Both of those are, they're a torque-rich motor. That Milwaukee 8 revs up a lot better than the twin cam used to. You get more linear power. It's nice,
Yeah.
but when you compare it to the 1262 DVT,
It's not even
it's
in the same
just
category.
not even in the same ballpark.
Even though the new platform, it still feels old compared to that,
Right.
which you would expect. I mean, because that is basically a motor that was, a superbike motor at some point in its life. So you're talking, an American twin versus an Italian superbike motor in cruisers.
Right.
It's clear that there's going to be no comparison. This is super smooth to ride, slow.
Yeah.
It's really comfortable. It's got a beautiful clutch on it. It's just riding it slow. You would think it wouldn't want to go slow, but it's totally rad around town too.
Yeah, and that's a big part of the desmodromic variable timing is that you get clean, smooth, linear power at the bottom when you're cruising slow, and then at the top of the revs it actually rips too.
Or these are very classic
Right.
Harley-Davidson Cruiser Americana feel. They are beefy for American V twin. I mean, 114. They're
But coming out
awesome.
of some of those turns when we're riding together, I could float the front out, and you're sitting there just ringing it.
Yeah, I mean, we went up Palomar Mountain, which is a sport bike mountain, and when we're getting towards the top, you could feel the power dropping off on these two bikes compared to the Diavel, to where there was times when I was it was only making more noise. It really wasn't accelerating anymore, and I had to be looking in my rearview mirror, and you're just like, are you gonna go or what?
Yeah. And so it sort of comes around to how you define a cruiser. I'd say a cruiser is a bike that you can casually cruise on, that doesn't feel like you have to race it, that doesn't feel like you have to throw yourself around. A big part of riding and loving cruisers is the emotional aspect of hearing the motor, feeling the vibration, seeing the bike. And I do get that with this bike. I love the sound it makes when you rev it up. I think that the aesthetic improvements this year are vast.
Speaking of vibration, I was really surprised in the vibration on the FXDR compared to the Fat Bob.
How it was
It was
stronger,
buzzy. It
more
was buzzy.
Yeah.
Not even like vibration like rumble, but actual buzz through the bars.
Yeah, like you're gonna shake a filling out.
Yeah, just like it was just buzzy. It was kind of strange to feel from an American cruiser. Usually you don't feel buzz, you feel vibration and pulsing, but you don't feel buzzing.
Right.
Let's talk about handling, because I mean, we did go up the sport bike mountain on cruisers.
So the 240 rear, 34-degree rake on the FXDR, it's sort of misleading because they've adjusted the trail in the triple trees. It does drop into the turns easier than you'd expect, but you're still going to find yourself fighting that wide rear as you exit the turns.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't notice it actually that much. Feels a little heavy turning in on that the rear tire, but not like overly so. And then once it's over, it's actually pretty dang stable and good. And you can kind of change up your line, and it goes around the corners really well, especially for the way it looks. If you looked at this bike, you would think it's a drag strip only bike. It would never go around a corner, and it actually does pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, limiting factor on the FXDR and the Fat Bob it's the lean angle.
Yeah,
on
it's
both
ground
bikes.
clearance,
It's
for sure.
it's where you're touching peg. It's where you're scraping your boot.
But I felt like the Fat Bob felt more neutral and easy to handle in the corners than the FXDR.
I'll agree.
And I mean, it still wasn't to the level of that.
Right.
But in terms of fun factor, out of all of them, I actually had more fun on the Fat Bob than I did on that and on that in the corners. Because this, it makes corners almost too easy.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going around corners and everyone is going way too slow around you when you're on this in the corners. You're like, oh, come on, And when you're on the Fat Bob, you're like throwing it around and it's doing stuff and it's really fun. You can back it into the corner kind of good, and it just feels really flickable and neutral. And then on this side, you're you almost don't trust it because the way it's shaped, right? In your
Yeah.
brain, you're going, I don't know.
That's the thing, is I felt like I was more wrestling the FXDR through those turns. It's fun, but you feel like it's not really at home. It's not what it's meant for. So
Yeah.
when you get out there and you're throwing it through the turns, you got to sort of wrestle it in order to get quick. One of the things that always gets me with the Fat Bob is the really tall profile on the front tire. And it's very wide. You know,
Yeah,
it's very sensitive to inputs on the highway, which make it a little less cruisy.
It didn't bother me on the highway at all. Maybe because I spend more time on nakeds and things like that. So I didn't feel nervous or flittery or quick to react. So, but I was really surprised how well it actually works in the corners though. Like you would expect a real heavy feel out of that motorcycle. You look at it and be like, man, the thing must be like just a bear to get into corners and out of corners. It's super balanced and it feels light.
Yeah, I mean, my qualms would be, when you look at the FXDR, that tire makes sense. When you look at the Fat Bob, it's got this like 80/20 dual sport tire on it, which to me seems like a purely aesthetic choice. And I don't think that tires are something that should be chosen for aesthetics.
True, but they seem to work just fine. So
Yep.
I'll go with it, man. Like,
All right, let it ride.
let it ride. This thing, you just think about a turn, it goes. Like
straight
it
through it.
turns in super quick.
Right.
You know, sport bike or naked bike style, and it's super stable in the corners. It's got loads better suspension than the other two.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
mid-corner bumps. I mean, Palomar's not. You know, they repaved one half. The other half is
Right.
rough and bumpy, and this thing just kind of soaks all that up and
Yeah.
doesn't get all bound up. Where the other two
Right.
kind of do their thing, and every once in a while you hit a bump and you're like, whoa, you know.
Right.
This has got way more.
Fully adjustable Öhlins front and rear, M50 calipers in the front, Brembo caliper in the rear,
Traction control,
traction control,
ABS,
quick shift.
quick shift.
It's just you really
a full color
see-
TFT dash.
You see where your money's going here.
Yeah, there's
Whereas
it's
you
a lot
can't
more
help
for the
but-
money.
Can't help but feel like you're paying a little bit more for the brand and the style
Sure.
with the Harleys.
Yeah. One question I have though is, Harley guys, would they ever even sit on that? Would they give it a go?
I like to think so, but at the same time, there's a lot of stubbornness and rigidity in that motorcycling category.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know, a lot of people that are just stuck with Buy American, which
Sure.
nothing wrong with
There's
that.
nothing wrong with that.
But there's a lot more in motorcycling, and this bike has a lot to offer. All right, so end of the day, those are the rankings. We got the Ducati up first, Fat Bob second, and the FXDR last.
Yep, the least cruisery won the cruiser shootout. But that's the way it is. We got to tell it like it is. That's the best bike.
Yeah, it was a pretty clean sweep through all the categories, except for the emotional connection where the Harleys really took it.
And there will be some emotion in the comments. So if you have comments, put them down below. We'll reply back to them, check them out. And if you like what we're doing, like our videos, subscribe, and share them with all your friends. And we'll see you next time.